Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from South Hadley, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Camus. He offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Mass. Now you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
That's correct. This is a discussion about one of the wars of Holyoke.
And today he'll be educating us on Holyoke in the Civil War. So how did the American Civil War affect Holyoke?
Right, you remember that Holyoke was a mill city in the 1860s. It had just been started out. One of the first companies to own a canal had gone bankrupt in 1859, and they were bought out by a Holyoke-based company, the Holyoke Water Company, Power Company, and they were trying to get the canal going again. They had to stop the digging of the canal during the Civil War because there wasn't enough labor. And a lot of the mills also lost people. If you're a population of 5,000, and 800 men go to war, then your working population is way down. And it was hard to recruit men during this time. So there was a great effect of the Civil War upon the United States. Also, during the war, a lot of the factories converted to make men's uniforms for that war. So like the Hattie Fowles Company, the Lyman Mill, the Germanium Mill, they all changed over to making wool products or cotton products to help the war effort. And so there's a great effect. And of course, 55 men from Holyoke would die during the course of the Civil War due to illnesses or injuries received. And I'll tell you where they're honored and where some of them are buried around Holyoke. And then we're also going to talk about the Hamden Park, which became Veterans Park, and its statue, because that was put there to honor the dead from the Civil War.
And where are the Holyoke men that died due to the Civil War honored?
They're honored very gracefully by a statue in the middle of Veterans Park. This was originally called Hamden Park until 1962. And the statue is that of Columbia, and she has a very demure look, looking down. And she's dressed somewhat like Nike, but a non-warlike Nike. It's definitely Columbia. And the men's names were engraved in the stone that forms this statue. When the names were worn out, in the year 2023, they were replaced by 4 bronze plaques which carry the names of these 55 men. So they're honored very beautifully by a nice statue in this park. The park was older than the Civil War. It was formed when Holyoke was formed. The statue was put in the year 1876 on the centennial of the United States itself. And Holyoke was very proud of the many men that served during the course of that war. And I hope you go to visit there and see the other memorials to other wars, but this is by far the best one of all. Each of the men's names I've taken, and I've put down what regiment they fought, what their names, where they were born, and when they died, and then put also a link to their burial place. Of the 55 men, I think I found 35 burial places. There's some still to go. It's a very hard job.
And quickly before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there he has both videos of the various stops along each tour and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you're interested in setting up your private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And they are perfect for fun, educational, and outdoor activities for the whole family, or for your group parties, especially those special occasions and get-togethers. And they're also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview, are some of these men whose names are on the statue buried in Holyoke?
Okay, two of the men are with graves in Holyoke. And these two men are Thomas Holman. Thomas Holman got very sick during the course of the war, also with an injury. And he came out of the war, and for a month he lived up in Goshen, where his family had moved from Holyoke to Goshen. His father, Sidney Holman, was a minister in Holyoke. And after a month, Thomas Holman had died. And he's buried in the Forestdale Cemetery, very close to where there's a tomb. In fact, to the left side of that tomb. And the stone is a beautiful brown stone, a gravestone. Now, there's also James Burr, and he was originally buried in Weir, Massachusetts. He was an officer during the Civil War. He died during the course of that war, and his body was taken out after the war from a cemetery in Weir and buried in the Forestdale Cemetery of Holyoke, Massachusetts, to be with his wife and to be with his wife's parents. And he's very easy to find. He's about one row inwards from the administration building. So these two men are the only two men that are buried in Holyoke. The others have, some of them have stones around New England because they were brought back to their birthplaces, not to Holyoke, because they had been men that came during the course of the 1850s into Holyoke to work in the mills. And then there's also men that are buried around various cemeteries around the United States, in Arlington National Cemetery and other national cemeteries, including Gettysburg. And some of the men, their bodies have been lost, and they're probably buried out in small forests or woods around the South, and they probably will stay that way because they were never marked.
And how was this statue improved?
All right, the statue in the middle of Veterans Park was improved greatly in the year 2022 to 2023. Each of the pieces of the statue was raised off the stone and checked for problems and fixed. The entirety of it was repainted 4 times to give it an original look. I told you that each of the 4 sides, which had the inscriptions erased over the course of the last 150 or 140 years, have now their names engraved in metal at the base of the statue, and that was a beautiful job. A flagpole was removed from in front of the statue because it was not original, and it was placed somewhere else in the park. And so there was great improvements to this beautiful statue. Now the statue is of Columbia. I told you that she has the attire of Nike and that she's with a demure look. And that's because she's facing south towards the southern states, towards the Confederacy. She's saying to the Confederacy that we want you back and we want it under equal terms. And that has happened. And that's great. But in 1876, that was not assured at all, because still the South was very non-committal to being part of the states again. Thank you.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours. And again, we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can tune into a large selection of our other podcasts and much more on his website. And again, that's holyokecanaltour.org. And you can email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And be sure to check out his upcoming 2024 season tours and more as they become available. Thank you for tuning in.